it's Lauren here. A warning, this episode contains deep chats, lots of swear words, and some things you might find upsetting, but you know that we cannot help but overshare.
Hi, it's Gemma.
And Lauren.
Get ready to listen to our innermost secrets
in the Oops, We Overshared Again podcast. Hi, welcome to the podcast, Jasmine. Do you want to introduce yourself?
Yeah, hi, I'm Jasmine. I never know what to say with these things.
Yeah, we never know either. That's why our intros take about 46 takes normally.
Oh my goodness, yeah. So how do I introduce myself? Well, I call myself a coach, a healer, and a mystic, and I work very closely with the AKASHIC Records, which is what we're going to be chatting about today. I'm psychic as well, I guess, and the main way that I channel psychic information is working with the AKASHIC Records, and I'm obsessed with them, so I'm very, very excited to talk about them, chat about them with you guys today.
Can I just say, and I know this because obviously I know you anyway, but that just really triggered me how confidently you just said, and I'm psychic.
Yeah. Because that's been a journey of owning that and claiming that, though. That's taken a while to own that time.
Yeah, that just really, I was like, God, to be able to say it with that much confidence, because every time I even talk about the facts, so for background for anyone listening, me and I work with Jasmine to try and do whatever I'm doing, I guess to be more intuitive and work with the AKASHIC Records and things like that, but I really struggle with that, owning it, I think, at the moment.
Yes, I did for a while, but it's my view that we're all actually psychic, that we're all born with psychic abilities. It's just how much we allow ourselves to tap into it and trust it. So I don't actually believe that I'm special or different to anyone else. It's just that some people have more of a natural connection than others, but everyone, I believe, is born with psychic abilities.
Do you know what my mum used to tell me when I was little? Everyone's born with an antenna on their head, and that some people's antenna a little bit bigger and a little bit more sensitive, and others aren't. And if you don't want the antenna, you can ignore it and not listen to it and it will go away, or if you want to strengthen it, it will get bigger and more sensitive.
I love that explanation. That's exactly it. Yeah,
she explained it to me when I was little.
Wow, I love your mom.
Does it scare you, Gemma? Does it scare you, by the way, just quickly? Because some people get really freaked out when I talk about
psychic. Yeah.
Does it scare me? What the thought of being psychic scare me? Yeah. Well, when I was little it did, hence the explanation.
So were you tapped in to stuff when you were little?
I used to see a lot of things.
Did you?
Yeah. And used to freak me out. We used to have things, I say things at the time, I thought they were things. I had people in my room and stuff like that, and it used to really scare me.
Okay.
So hence the explanation from my mum.
Yes.
And a lot of I don't know, almost like exorcisms, if I'm being honest. She used to come in my room and say about leaving me alone and go somewhere else and things like that to stop that when I was a kid.
Wow.
I don't even know if I've told you that, Lauren, actually. That just kind of come to my head when she was talking about it. Yeah. The suppressed memory there cropping back out.
So was your house haunted or something then? Was there quite a lot of activity where you lived as a child? You were super sensitive to it.
Just me.
And can I ask, do you still feel tapped in to that now?
In a scary way, yeah. Not calm. Lauren's very sensitive though. Lauren's so chill. Yeah. She's voice noted me before walking around her house thinking that there's it's just a ghost ringing the doorbell, stuff like that. I'm not chill like that. Lauren's I don't like the dark or anything, to be fair.
I would say you're a lot more in tune with other kind of what people would call slightly more woo-woo stuff when it comes to crystals and things like that.
Yeah, I like all that sort of stuff.
Yeah. That makes sense, Lauren, with you being a Scorpio though, that you're more naturally in tune with the darker stuff, I guess. That's very Scorpionic.
I'm quite dark anyway. I was literally saying to a friend yesterday, actually, I was sometimes I'm do I talk about death too much? And I'm no. I'm literally before Gemma come here just now, I was talking about it. It's just, or with Gemma just before you got here, it's just one of those things where I just naturally gravitate towards, which is funny because I'm scared of everything. I have such severe anxiety, but when it comes to actual scary things, it doesn't bother me as much as like what I perceive to be scary, like not scary things. But yeah, no, I've never felt, I wouldn't be exploring it with you if it worried me. There's no, do you know, I was saying to a friend the other day, actually, it worries me more, like Gemma using that example of like a ghost ringing the doorbell or whatever, because I've had a lot of like weird, especially electric things happen. And it scares me more the idea that there's a man stood at my door ringing my doorbell than it does there's a spirit ringing my doorbell. So actually I kind of almost use it to calm myself down as well, because I'm like, well, they're not going to do anything.
Yeah, I resonate with that. It doesn't faze me or scare me either, really. And I would say I was quite sensitive as a child, but again, I never felt the fear around it. I was that child that would be like walking around the graveyard. Like I'd be that child that wanted to watch horror movies. Like I thrive off of that type of energy. Yeah.
I love that.
What was your when you was a kid, that was your parents like quite supportive of it?
Yeah, they were. Yeah, they've always spoken about spirits and things, so they're quite open and connected as well. So I guess that helped, because they never were scared, or they never put those kinds of thoughts into my mind, I guess.
Yeah, no, I get that.
It's interesting because you're a water sign as well, aren't you? It's that sensitive energy.
Yeah, definitely. I'm Pisces sun and moon, so I'm very intuitive and very sensitive to energy.
Yeah. So when it comes to the Akashic Records, especially for Gem, I've kind of explained it, and I think you've obviously spoken a little bit before as well, but what are the Akashic Records? Because sometimes I think I even forget that a little bit when I'm kind of
Well, you, at this point, from your explanation, Lauren, I'm kind of picturing a big filing cabinet in the sky.
That's how a lot of people picture it, as like either a big library, or exactly as you said, like a big filing cabinet or database that we can't see. It doesn't exist in the physical realm, but it exists on a vibrational level, basically. And it's basically based on the idea that energy can't be destroyed, right? So energy has to be stored somewhere, and energy is stored within this database, which is known as the Akashic Records. So it's basically a vibrational library of everything that's ever existed, but also every single thought that's been had, every single experience. So it's where everything that's ever happened, thought, and is yet to happen is stored on a vibrational plane. It's quite tricky to get your head around, but I definitely think having that image of like a database or a filing cabinet or a library helps some people to understand what it is. And we can all connect to it. You know, you don't have to be special or unique to be able to connect to the records. We all have access to that place.
How do you know you've connected to it?
It's a feeling. For me, it's like a feeling, a sense. And for me, I am mainly clairaudient, so I mainly hear the messages that come through. And when I'm connected to the records, the information that I can hear, it comes through in a very different way and tone to the thoughts that I have. I can decipher between what's a thought and what's actually a message from the Akashic Records. So for me, it's very auditory. For some people, they can see different things when they're connected to the records. Some people just have the feeling. It's different for everyone, but you kind of just know.
You're quite is your clairaudient, isn't you, Lauren?
I think
I'm struggling a little bit, because I think sometimes something comes out very obviously as a sound. So yes, I think so on some level. And then I also sometimes, and I've said it to you as well, Jasmine, like I just feel like I don't know. And then maybe it's more just that kind of knowing. But it's funny because when we tapped into it last week, so I do group sessions with Jasmine, and it very clearly a message came through basically telling me that I'm hearing it. And I don't think I've got it with me, but there was a message right at the end basically just telling me to trust myself, which is the whole point. I'm doing all of this anyway. And it said something like, relax, we're here with you, or something. And I'm very like annoyingly pernickety when it comes to the English language. Like it really irritates me when I'm that annoying person that like corrects people mentally when they message me with like the wrong you're or there or something. And I spelt here as in like here, we're here with you. And I found it really interesting because I'd just been explaining, like, I don't know how it's coming through. And I'm almost thinking about it too much that I can't tell how it's coming through, I feel like.
Right. Yeah. I feel like there was a message there in the way that they gave you the word here. It's like maybe you're hearing us.
I definitely don't think I see anything.
Okay.
That's the only one that I'm like super.
That might come later, because when I first started working in the Akashic Records, I would never see anything. But now my clairvoyance is becoming much stronger. So the more you practice and the more you work with it as well, it might be that some of the other psychic gifts start coming online. Something really interesting that you do as well, though, you draw when you're connected as well, don't you, Lauren? Which I've never seen. Actually, I've heard that people do it, but I don't think I've ever worked with anyone that channels in that way. So that's super interesting as well.
Do you know what it is though? I think it goes back to that fact that I can't get out of my head. And I find it really, really hard. And if I kind of have to just kind of sit there, I just struggle. I can't switch off. I can't stop. I'm such an overanalyzer. I mean, it comes with being an anxious person, right? That's why I'm an anxious person. I overanalyze absolutely everything. And I don't know, it's almost like, you know how you described it, Jasmine, when you said like a thought comes in, you kind of almost picture like a windscreen wipe.
Yeah.
It's almost like I'm doing that with a pen.
Okay.
It's that kind of back and forth action. That's the only way I can maybe describe it.
Yeah, and it helps you to focus, does it, whilst you're in there? It helps you to receive the information.
And then I find it interesting because I just naturally tend to write down what I hear or feel.
Yeah.
So it gives me something afterwards, and it's not usually very coherent, and sometimes I'm like writing on top of each other because my eyes are shut, but it gives me something afterwards. And it's funny because I've obviously drawn certain things as well, and just I don't know, I find it fascinating. I think my biggest issue right now is that I overthink it still a little bit, so I'm like, did I just make that up? That's where that's hard. And I think I don't like, is that how do you stop that?
Yeah, that took me a while as well. It's interesting you brought this up, because this is what we're actually going to be tapping into on the call tomorrow. So what I found was, when I was connected to my own records, I would have the same. I would be like, am I just doubting? Am I just making that up? Is that just my mind? But what really helped me was practicing connecting to somebody else's records, because you can then get the confirmation if stuff that you're sharing resonates with the other person. So we're going to do that. We're going to practice connecting to each other's records in the call tomorrow, which feels scary, but it's actually, for me, I actually get the information much more clearly when I'm connected to somebody else's records. And you have to push through that fear of this sounds stupid, this isn't going to resonate, because your ego might still crop in and tell you that. But then when you share it and you get the confirmation from the other person that resonates, that really helped me to build the trust, because you start getting okay, I can trust the information that's coming through. Yeah,
really interesting. Gemma's not going to leave me alone.
That's so cool.
Yeah, that's interesting. I'm looking forward to that, actually.
Can people tap into your records without your consent?
That wouldn't be ethical. No, you shouldn't. You should always have consent. It would be bad vibes if you were connecting without consent, for sure. Yeah.
Why? What are you planning?
No, what if someone's tapping into my records?
Gemma's got a very dark plan going on. No, I find it fascinating. Like, it's where, because obviously there's different ways to do it, and like you said, like the way that you like to do it quite often is through the Akashic Records. Why is that kind of, I guess, the route you've gone down, or how did that come about?
In terms of using my psychic gifts and channeling information, I think I probably was doing it before I started working in the records. Like, I've always been really sensitive to energy, and I've always, when I was working with clients, for example, like before tapping into the records, I would definitely feel stuff. I would feel stuff in my body, for example, where they maybe had blockages, and I would actually get random messages sometimes come through for clients. But I don't know, when I started working in the records, I think for me, it's like how it feels when you're connected to that space. It's really difficult to describe, but like the frequency of it, the energy, for me, it just feels like being surrounded by a warm hug when I'm in the records. It feels really like comforting, really safe. And the energy, for me, it just feels really, really powerful. And it's more of how I feel when I'm connected to that space that's drawn me in and made me so obsessed with it. Because I trained in Reiki as well before working with the Akashic Records, but then when I started working with the records, I've not really been drawn to use the Reiki. I just want to be using the energy in the Akashic Records, because for me it just feels really safe and really, really powerful. And the shifts that I've seen happen from using that energy, like in my life, and clients that I've worked with have been so powerful. But you do have to be ready for it, which I've spoken to you about, Lauren. It's like once you start working in the records, your soul knows that you're ready for change and transformation, because change and transformation will definitely occur. And it did for me as well when I first started working in them. Like I always explain that my whole life turned itself on its head when I started working with the energy within the records, but it's always for your highest and greatest good. But it's when you're ready for big transformation that you're drawn towards the records, for sure. So I guess I was at that stage when I was drawn towards them, that I was ready for the transformation and the shifts.
It's funny because when I think about when I first approached you about doing this, it's like what, January, and when I think about my life in like the last 4 months, I don't recognize my life compared to 4 months ago. It's completely different.
That's what I mean when I say it's powerful. And I've got so many clients who would agree, like just unexpected changes in your life that you couldn't have predicted, but when you look back and reflect, it's like, okay, I can see why that's happened. It's always working for your highest and greatest good.
Yep.
Yeah, no, absolutely. Yeah, I just find the whole situation fascinating. And I know you've spoken, I think it was a post that you did actually not that long ago on Instagram about past lives and soulmates and things like that. So me and Gemma were slightly joking but also not joking. The other day we actually made a reel out of it. It was an outtake while we were redoing our intro a couple of weeks ago, and we were like, do you reckon we're soulmates? And we had this like whole conversation about it. And it was funny because I'd recently seen this post of yours where you were talking about people in your life that you kind of believe you've encountered before in other lives. How did that kind of knowing happen, I guess?
So some of that information I've learned from my own Akashic records, from tapping in and simply asking my guides the questions. So you can ask them whatever you want to ask. So you can ask, did I know so and so in a past life? What past lives did we share together? And I've been able to receive that information. Some of it was from someone else channeling that information. So I think, for example, me and my friend Grace both had Akashic records readings around the same time before I trained in the Akashic records, and she had asked the person who was reading her records, did me and Jazz share some past lives together? And the information that she got was that we'd shared many. One of them was that we were birds, and I don't know if you saw that on the post. I was an owl and she was an eagle, which is so random. But yeah, we literally got all of the information from asking the questions. So again, when I had my first ever Akashic records reading before I trained, I asked her about me and my partner, did we share a past life? And so much information came through. She was like, yeah, you did. I could see you were living on a boat, you were the male in the relationship, he was the female. And what's really interesting, she commented how that potentially plays out in our relationship now. She was like, oh, just sometimes he want you to take on the more like masculine role and you want him to take on the more feminine role. And I was like, yes, that resonates. So very often, if something played out in a past life, you might still see the patterns reoccurring in this lifetime as well.
Wow.
It's crazy.
It's a lot to get around, isn't it?
But we're super excited to ask our little boy as well, because I believe that children remember their past lives up until a certain point. So I'm super excited to ask him as soon as he can talk and understand about his past lives.
Oh my god, there's an activity for you later, Gem.
Yeah.
With your toddler.
Yeah, that's the best age. And they're 3. I used to work with a little girl as a nanny. She was 3 at the time, and she would just come out with stuff that I'm sure was about past lives. Like one time we were just playing in the park and she just randomly said, I'm Sumerian. I didn't even know what that was, so I googled it, and Sumeria was like an ancient civilization that like a 3-year-old would not know about. Yeah. So I would ask her questions. I was like, oh, so what was it like when you were Sumerian? And she was like, we were fighting all the time, and from the research that I've done, they were like in battle and in war. I'm getting chills as I'm saying this. So children, no, they can remember.
Do you know, when I was a kid, I don't think I've told you this either, Lauren, sorry, I've got so much shit coming up right now. I used to have recurring dreams about it was really vivid, like there was no way I could have known stuff I knew about war, First World War and Second World War. And I just thought, I used to think when I was younger, like I was a soldier. I don't know, I can't even tell you. And then even when I remember being at school and we had to write letters, like we were doing like history sort of stuff, you had to pretend to be a soldier. And I just remember all these different things I would do, and I could tell you so, like, the noise in the trenches and like random stuff I just knew so much, right? And I sort of half joked because I'm a bit like, I think I just made it up, you know, like a bit like that. And I remember saying to Ben when we got together, we went to Duxford, which is like an air museum, right? And I was like, I was sort of a bit on the fence anyway. I thought maybe I'm just making it up, right? Maybe it's not really real. And then I actually had a past life regression thing.
Yeah.
And there was like 3 lives this woman tapped into, and 2 of them, one was in First World War, one was in the Second World War. But like to the point, I could tell you the bloke's name. I was like stood in a hospital. I could tell you my mum's name, my girlfriend. Like it was the freakiest thing ever. And I was like, that sort of gay, like there was no way that this woman would have known about me, like as a kid, like what these dreams I'd always been having and stuff like that. It's like, maybe that's what it is then.
100%.
This, and I've yeah, so stuff like that I do think is mad in a good way.
Yeah, that's confirmation. Like that's too much. That would be too much of a coincidence.
Yeah, but it is like what Lauren was saying. I've always done that. You'll have a thought or a feeling or something, and you're like, I'm just making that up. Like I'm just doing that to my, like, you. I mean, why on earth I'd want to make up that I was in a war or something? I don't know. But it's almost that thing that you do think, and you kind of tell yourself like, nah, it's all in my head. You know what I mean?
Yeah, you do. But I think the more you practice and the more you start using it, while working with the Akashic Records, like the quieter that voice becomes. So for me now, I just 100% believe it. I don't even doubt the stuff that comes through. It has been a journey, like probably for the first year. So I've been working with them for 2 years, but probably for the first 6 months to a year, there was still like a little bit of a niggling doubt. But just the more I've practiced and the more my relationship with my own guides has got stronger, I don't doubt anything that comes through now, as crazy or random as it might be.
It's crazy. I mean, I think I had a similar experience with you, Jasmine, when we did the womb healing for me. I know you tapped into a couple of past lives, I believe. There's one that I'm thinking of right now, but it's not the same situation at all, but it very much was quite a mirror of situations that I've had in this life. And I think it's interesting because it's like, you don't know that, we're not close enough for you to know those things because they're very, big things. And it's interesting how that can I don't know, there's just certain things like that where you're like, I can't pinpoint how that could happen.
Yeah, and you need to lean into trust.
Yeah, see, that's just like that is like the big thing though, right? And I just think when it comes to trust, it's a difficult like concept for me to be able to just trust. I don't know.
I'll ask you this though, would you struggle more trusting yourself? Like if Jasmine said to you, oh Lauren, you was a bird in your last life, and she told you that, versus you sitting there thinking, do I think I was a bird in my past life? Would you question it if you thought it, but trust it if Jasmine said it?
Absolutely, but I would say I'm like that in all aspects of my life.
Yeah, no, but I'm the same. That it's not that it's not trusting. I think we're similar in that. I fully believe in psychic abilities. I believe in spirits. I believe, like Lauren says, well, I'm very love myself a crystal. Yeah, very into all the spiritual side of it. I just don't trust my own intuition, judgment, abilities. Whereas Jasmine, you could say to me, Gemma, you were whatever. Yeah, a purple ball of glue. Yeah. And I'd be like, oh my God, was I? That's amazing. I question it in the slightest. But if I was like, I don't know, whatever, like this situation with me, or like with Lauren thinking, oh, is there a spirit in here, or is my doorbell just keep going off for no reason? But isn't it funny that we would trust someone we don't really know? We don't know if, you could be saying anything. Yeah. But we'd always trust other people's interpretation of that over our own judgment.
Yeah, that's why such a huge part of me teaching the Akashic Records to others is around the trust piece, because that is like such a huge part of it, and going on a journey of deepening your self-trust. Can I ask, Gemma, you know when you had the past life regression, was you able to see the stuff then, or was it that the woman just saw?
It was me.
You saw it, but you still didn't fully trust it.
I did after that.
Oh, you did after that.
Yeah,
okay.
because it was too. It was too weird.
Yeah.
It's too, like, feel a bit weird even talking about it now, but it's like, it was me. Obviously, it's not me as I am now, but it's like I was not. I'm a very visual person. Like even when I meditate and stuff, like I'm a very I like a good visualization. Like for me, saying about the Akashic Records, I wouldn't be able to just shut my eyes and be like, tell me what is so and so. I would have to visualize myself rummaging through and picking something up, right?
Yeah.
So, but with a visualization, it's not a feat for me anyway. It's like I could visualize myself standing on a beach, and it's like that. It's really hard to describe. But it wasn't like a visualization. It was like a memory, and it was like a I could feel my feet on the floor, and I could smell the smells in this hospital, and I could hear like, and the fear I felt. Oh my God, it's like. And like this particular instance, I'd lied about my age to join the army. I had a massive row with my mum before I went, because she was like, you're an idiot. You're not old enough. Leave it to other people. And I didn't listen. And she was like, if you die, you bloody deserve it. And the last thing she said to me. And obviously I died. But it's like that thing is, not a fan. Don't recommend the war.
I'm interested in it. I will do it at some point, but I've not yet felt that like strong pull.
It like literally even now makes me feel sick.
Okay. What's really interesting knowing you now as a person, and it's like, if you die, it's your own bloody fault, and you have like publicly will say you've got like quite chronic health anxiety and constantly feel a need to look after
Probably because of bloody that. Thanks,
like,
mother from another life.
Yeah.
This is what I mean, though. It's quite funny because when you've got that kind of like that thought of if you die, it's your own bloody fault, and then you're like very much in control of your health to a like neurotic level in control.
Yeah.
It's
an interesting contrast, isn't it?
That's to be honest, that's why. So the woman that I'd worked with, it was at Samar. Is who it was, and it was because of this after I had Elliot, my little boy, health anxiety for me especially. I've always been a bit worried about my health and whatever, but like I'd become, as Lauren said, neurotic in my pregnancy as well, truth be told. And I reached out to her, and we did like some coaching and stuff and some like whatever have you, healing. She said about the past lives, and tapped into it, but that's exactly that. It's I definitely believe from that, and because in that, because it was weird as well, because the dates were coming through jumbled, and I again just thought it was myself, but it wasn't. It's because I had two, one in the First World War, one in the Second World War. Apparently didn't learn my lesson the first time. Thought, fuck it, Second War, let's go for it. But with one of them, when I was in that hospital, and that as well, I think it might be where my fear of, because I had a home birth through sheer bloody mindedness, because I just weren't going to hospital, don't do hospitals. But again, like she said, it potentially all stems back to that, because I've had such a, I mean, you don't get much more traumatic than a field hospital, right? In a war, like 100 and whatever years ago, when we didn't have the modern medicine we have now. So yeah, there you go.
So it's crazy. It's kind of past life regression now, but I guess I can ask those questions in the records anyway. It's that what the good thing is, if you just ask the questions, you can just get the information rather than having to actually physically experience.
Yeah, it was a bit grim
of it. That sounds a bit challenging. It's not really like that in the records. And in the record, your guides will only share information on past lives that's not going to be too traumatic for you to receive and that you're ready to hear. They're quite good like that. They won't tell you anything that's going to scare you or make you feel traumatized. But the fact that I'm able to regress to that past life does indicate you're probably ready to receive.
Yeah. It served a purpose. It opened my eyes to a lot of things, but it's it definitely if she hadn't have been like, if I'd had that visualization on my own, I would have been like, oh my god, it's probably because I watched Band of Brothers or something. But it was the fact that I wasn't saying out loud what I was seeing, and she was saying to me dates and names and stuff, and I was like, did I say that? She was like, no. They're like, she was like, who's Rose? And I was like, what? What? Like, it was that kind of thing. Whereas I think, again, it's that confirmation. If I had just experienced that on my own or whatever, I wouldn't have believed my own experience, you know?
Yeah, 100%.
It's interesting. I definitely experienced with Jasmine, again, that thing of what you just said about not them not wanting me to know anymore. And that's a really interesting thing, because for Gem or anyone else listening, it was very much a experience where Jasmine started to tell me a past life experience and then was like, do you want to know more? And I was like, you know me, I'm like, yeah, tell me everything. And then you told me a little bit more, and then you were like, no. That's as much as they're kind of willing to give, because it was a traumatic situation. And I think it's probably we don't know what's going to affect us, do we, until we hear it. And I think there's that. And I mean, things affect me in my life. I mean, I'm like a sponge for things affecting me anyway, and I'm aware of that. And sometimes it's the like silly little pieces of information that just randomly stick with you, don't they? So I think it's interesting, but it's also quite comforting to know that there is a barrier. And actually, Gemma, I wonder if, even though yours was quite a traumatic like situation in that, I wonder if in some way it's allowed you to be less judgmental. Like, do you think you're less judgmental on yourself for the fact that you are a bit neurotic? Because it's like, well, there's a freaking reason for it.
I mean, we weren't really friends when I did that, so you also didn't know me as closely as you do now. And if you imagine what I'm like now, but times that by like 1,000, that was me.
You're a lot better now, even in the 2 years.
Oh yeah, no, even in the years we've been friends. But I mean, like the shift that had for me in between me literally constantly say, and I used to say all the time, like, I'm gonna get this, I'm gonna get that, I'm gonna die, I'm gonna blah 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 blah. And it was because I would be like, well, you know, I had it coming. Like, and it's that kind of thing. Whereas it's that experience shifted me dramatically, changed the way I spoke about myself, changed the way I spoke about my health, changed the way I used my language and my thoughts in a massive way. It's not a cure-all, it's not there to fix anything, of course, but it changed things for me humongously. So it did definitely benefit me in a big way, and it coming through when it did, and it did give me a little bit of not reassurance, like, you know, that I weren't actually losing the plot when I was younger, and that actually all the experiences I had when I was younger weren't that I was, because the thing is, not to get too deep, because I used to say that I saw things and saw people and things like that, and I was under a mental health team when I was a teenager for mental health issues. They just basically thought I was bonkers, because there I am saying, like, there's a man that sits in my room and watches me and it freaks me out. Or like the fact that I had a dream one night and my mum's dead granddad that died when she was like in her 20s come to me.
Wow.
And it's like, but all these things that I'm like, I went down to my mum one morning and I said something and she was like, what did you say? And I said, this guy in this house in my dream said this to you. She was like, what did he look like? And I told her and she got a picture out. I was like, yeah, that's him. She's like, that's no. Like, how? But it's all these things that you then, but I convinced myself over the years, you're like, I just made that up. I must have seen a photo of him, like when I was looking, like when I was a kid or something, or do you know what I mean? I must have seen this, or it must have been because I watched that television show, or, but then I think when something happens later on, you actually can kind of almost justify yourself a bit more.
Yeah. That's nice.
Yeah, why not?
You're super psychic. You need to step into it and own it. I feel as though
it's funny because you don't talk about, whenever I talk about it,
because it freaks me out.
You definitely don't. Yeah, you never ever would. I not that I'm aware of any experience in recent times.
I forgot about a lot of this stuff since we started talking about it, but it does freak me out massively. I'm not gonna lie. I feel incredibly uncomfortable right now.
What is it about it that really scares you?
Like getting possessed and getting like sucked into things I shouldn't be getting sucked into, and
so there's things you can do to stop that from happening. You can literally like ask to only connect to spirits of a high vibration. You can protect your energy, like visualize your energy being surrounded by a bubble of light, and you can call upon like your spirit guides to make sure that anything you are connecting to is only for your highest and greatest good. And I think that's a good thing about the records as well. By the very nature of it, you're only connecting to things that are for your highest and greatest good. Like there's no risk of you connecting to dark energy when you're so there are like steps that you can take, but I think it's very common for people to be freaked out by it. You're one, but there's little things you can do to hopefully like reduce those fears and anxieties.
Maybe.
I guess it's control as well, though, isn't it? And when you're like an anxious person, like I totally get it because I'm an anxious person. Of everything we do, we operate under. We feel more comfortable if we can control the outcome of what's about to happen. And I think weirdly, even though me and Gemma share that, for you, Gem, you're kind of like, I can't control it. No, thank you. Scary. They might possess me and drag me down the stairs.
But you say that though, but it's very much like I remember my mum telling me when I was like, my mum again, she listens to this, she was like, never get a Ouija board because you will die.
I would agree. I wouldn't recommend.
But then I'm like, okay, right. And then you watch films when you're a kid, didn't you? And then you're just like, no, thank you. The dark. I will get dragged down a staircase by some weird figure or something. So no.
I do get it. I think, I don't know. I just find it fascinating. And I'm just like, there's so much that we don't know, or I just find it like fascinating. And there have been little things for me where I'm like, oh, that makes sense. And a bit like you, Gemma, with yours. And I guess, especially when you have something that is like, well, any anxiety is, right, like highly illogical. And then you kind of feel stupid your whole life for making a big deal out of something that everybody else just goes on with their life and deals with every single day and doesn't even think about it. It's when you've got something where you can be like, oh, well, that kind of makes sense. It's not about giving yourself an excuse, but sometimes it just makes you feel a little bit less idiotic as well. And I know I've definitely felt that with like the one that I'm like highly aware of when it comes to past life. And it very much, the experiences that I believe that version of myself went through are the fears that I now have make so much sense. And I think it gives you a little bit of I don't know, a bit of understanding, I guess.
But I'm in awe of you as well, how you do tap into things like that, and you do like the stuff you've told me and the stuff you come out and I'm like, wow, like that is amazing. Like I think it's incredible.
But I don't know if you would agree, Jasmine. For me, it comes back down to like, when you're a kid, you're like super just open and curious, right? And just in like don't need an explanation. And I guess for me, this is the one thing where I'm like, I know I'm not going to get an explanation. I know I can't make sense of it. For some reason that doesn't freak me out, which is great. But it's like I kind of almost treat it like I am a child, I guess. And it's that I kind of use it as a bit of a like, I know I'm not going to understand this. Like it doesn't matter. And actually, because I'm such a control freak and everything else, it's quite nice for me to have something where I'm not. I kind of almost use it as a break from myself, which sounds a bit, but do you know what I mean? It's like a part of myself that I don't normally see as a trait of mine.
Yeah.
I can explore it in this way.
Yeah, I love that. I would agree. Like for me, it's fun. It's something fun. It's like a fun aspect of my life.
Did you do it every day, right?
Yeah, I would agree. It's like, and I always enter it as well with curiosity, as you've explained, and like just literally surrendering and being curious and not having any expectations about it is what's fun as well.
What's the weirdest thing you've ever found out from the records?
Oh my goodness.
That you don't mind sharing.
Yeah, that you don't mind sharing. If it's that weird, we get it. We don't want to share it.
It's just interesting.
Because there's been some what did you ask? The weirdest.
Like something you were like, what?
Probably the lifetime where I was an owl and my friend was an eagle. That was pretty far out there. That was pretty out there, yeah. I'm sure there's been others. I'm trying to. Oh, another really interesting one that I found out from my own records is that my little boy was my mum in a past life. So we've switched roles. Yeah. So he was my mum and he's just waking up now as we speak.
Heard you.
He heard.
Yeah.
My partner will get him. He was my mum, and then my friend Grace was my sister. So he was both of our mums in a past life.
That's so cool.
Yeah.
And you found out from your records, you found that out?
So when I conceived him, I kept, every time I was meditating, I kept hearing the name Rose or Roseanne, and it was just repeating. I was like, what does this mean? So at first I thought, oh, maybe I'm pregnant, maybe it's going to be a girl and she wants to be called Roseanne. Like that was my first train of thought. And every time I was pulling oracle cards, they were saying Rose, or they had roses on them. So I went into my records and I was like, what does this mean? Why do I keep hearing the name Roseanne? And they explained that Roseanne was mine and Grace's mum in a past life. And when I'd read her records before, that had come through. Roseanne had come through, and it had come through that she'd had quite a challenging relationship with her mum. So yeah, they explained that Roseanne was our mum, who we both had a difficult relationship with now, and then that soul was coming back through Kai to like repair our relationship, but with reversed roles. I'm getting chills as I'm explaining that, so I know that's confirmation.
Oh, that's lovely.
It's interesting because if you look at your little kind of new family unit that you've created, you and your partner and your child, there's that confirmation that all of you in different ways have been connected before. And that must be, do you know, and maybe this just comes from my insecurity of how I am with trust generally, but does that comfort you in the like, we're supposed to be together? Like there's no question on that. Like I know it's not just, I don't know, because I'm such a like people leave person, and actually if I feel like I met someone and I was aware that they'd been there before and that we were kind of supposed to, it almost would calm me down a little bit. I feel like me looking for external stuff still though.
Yeah, it helps me to trust that everything happens for a reason as well. It like confirms that belief that I have, and that nothing's a coincidence, and that, what do I want to say? Yeah, it's like I believe we have like soul contracts with certain people, like we have a purpose for, and we're here to like learn certain things from each other. So yeah, truly do believe that.
I love that. I think that's something you just said something then quickly that I think is what I need to kind of or what I'm trying to grasp, I think, at the moment. And obviously, Gem, you kind of mentioned it earlier as well, with talking about when you were a child, but that thing of like, oh, it's just a coincidence for her. But what you say of nothing is a coincidence, almost like coincidence doesn't actually exist. That is what that is. That is an interesting concept, because if you decide to adopt the belief that coincidence doesn't exist, then you have no choice but to trust that that's what that is when a coincidence happens.
Yeah. That's a really good way of thinking about it, isn't it?
Thinking about it.
Yeah. So that's something I'm kind of like working on at the moment. I'm like, every time I think something's a coincidence, I'm like, that's that, you know, that's because that's what we've put a logical word on something that isn't logical.
Yeah.
That's really, I'd never thought of that. I believe very much like everything happens for a reason. I fully believe that. And I believe every decision we make, every person we meet they're there for a reason. But exactly what you just said there about there is no, because there isn't, is there really? You think about it. But we are taught, oh, it's a coincidence. What coincidence bumping into you? I've just been talking about you the other day. I wonder why. But yeah, no, that's awesome.
And I'm like, oh, coincidences don't exist. Like, why is it even a thing? I guess
Literally.
It just
because, as Lauren said, they got to slap a label on it when it doesn't make logical sense.
Yeah.
Don't know, that just as you said it, of like nothing's a coincidence. That's kind of how I interpreted it. Of you're right, nothing is. Like we just say that to make us feel, to try and make logical sense out of something, or to feel more comfortable with something that doesn't make sense. Because I think freaking history sports, anything that doesn't make sense we don't like. So
yeah, whole thing as well, again, isn't it? Because we can't control it if it doesn't make sense. Yeah. Wow.
Something
if someone wanted to tap into a Akashic record, or wanted to, you know, look into that a bit more, what should they do?
There's many things you can do. You can learn about it yourself if you feel called to do that. Like, there's various books and things. I've never read a book about the Akashic records, I'll be honest. That wasn't something that I felt drawn to do. There's like free resources you can access. I think before I trained in the Akashic records, I did some meditations on YouTube, so they are available. But for me, I really wanted the structure and the support of having someone guide me through them. So I did do a training course, and obviously now I'm training others, but it's completely up to the individual how they want to tap into it. You know, it's not protected information that you have to go through a certain teacher or course to access. You can look into it yourself, or you can source a teacher that you trust. And I think, again, it's no coincidence who you feel called to train with. Like, I believe that you will know like the right teacher for you, if that makes sense. So.
And if people want it, so do they have to learn how to do it themselves, or could they, for example, come to you just for a reading to ask you a question for you to tap into their records?
Yeah, so I do both. So I do readings for people, and then I'm also doing the training as well.
Amazing.
Awesome.
Well, thanks so much for coming and talking to us today. I feel like it's just fascinating, and me and Gemma we didn't even know we were doing it, but we've accidentally made this entire season like really spiritual. So it's just added to it. It's really odd. Like, we've looked at all our guests and all of our topics, and we were like, there's not a single episode that's like not spiritual. It's really funny how that happens.
We're following Lauren on her spiritual psychic journey of development.
I love it.
Yeah,
I guess everything can be made spiritual, I suppose, though. In life, everything can have a spiritual element to it. It's another.
I'm definitely in a place of like leaning deeper into it.
It's exciting,
I guess.
It's very exciting.
It is very exciting. But yes, thank you so much. And yeah, just thanks for chatting to us. It's been nice, and I'm very excited for our call tomorrow now.
Right. See what comes through. Cool. Thank you, guys.
Well, thank you.
Thank you for joining us.